We do have several. So not hearing any more comments, the agenda is accepted. We will move to public comments. We have one person in the room.
Thank you so much. And you have 3 minutes.
I'll be fast.
No, you're good, but just want to.
So I'll read the.
Okay.
This time is for members of the public to address the commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. The commission values your comments, but it cannot take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes are allowed for each speaker. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Mike McGinley, and I'm a resident of Palm Springs. I've owned a home here since 2001 and a permanent resident since 2019. During this period of time, I have watched or I have felt the climate changing. And last year, I think we'll all agree, was incredibly hot. And although I would go away in August, I'm starting to look at going out of town in July and August, and maybe even part of June and September, because of the heat that we are experiencing now in the desert. And I don't believe it's going to get better. It's only going to get worse. And we need to do things to mitigate this heat. We're going to lose, as a matter of fact, one of my partners manages a hotel. The hotel business was way down this summer because it was way too hot for people to come here. In addition to that, restaurants are losing patrons. I think if you look at what the city took in this past summer, you'll be surprised at how little we took in compared to previous years. Now, I've been bending Jeffrey Bernstein's ear on sustainability, including more trees and shade structures. And I look at 2 cities that have a similar type of mirror our climate here in the desert. One is Phoenix, and the other is Las Vegas. Phoenix has really moved forward on sustainability with shade structures and trees. And we can learn a lot from what they're doing because they're ahead of us. Vegas is doing some things, but Phoenix is the city that I point to all the time that mirrors us. If you'd like to pass this around, we live in a unique area where we can do things that are really eye-catching because of our modernism and other things like that. The shade structures can be done in such a way that are eye-popping. That will put us on the map for a lot of reasons. So those are the shade structures, a few of them that I saw that I thought are amazing, and we can work from that. And then the other situation, which requires a little bit more time because of growing period, are trees. And there are certain trees that will do extremely well here in our urban areas. Either we water them with a system that's already in place, or in LDC type countries where I've worked and lived, they use water trucks like once a week to water these trees. It's a little bit more, what should I say, primitive to do it that way, but it works. When I worked in Egypt, for example, there's water trucks everywhere on the trees. But just a few ideas I wanted to bring to your attention, and hope that we don't take a long time in debating this because climate change is real and it's happening quickly. Is that it? What they said to
I will make to extend in the corner before you go.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you so much for
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
very aligned.
Do we have any other public comment in person or on Zoom?
Do we have any public comments from Zoom today? Okay, hearing none, Chair, so earlier today, we received a number of pieces of written public comment over the past 24 hours or so. I sent around a link to it's the same portal where you can find all of our agenda packages and things now, but I'd like to just briefly summarize those into the record, just so people are aware kind of those comments. I figured commissioners may not have had time to spend time with all those comments over the past couple days. So one thing that I would like to note is that we did get a comment letter from the Desert Valley Builders Association on the energy efficient renovations ordinance that we discussed, the REACH code that we discussed in the last meeting. I would recommend, I'm not going to read the details of this one, would recommend that the commissioners have time to take a look at that one. It gives their feedback from their industry perspective on the ordinance so far, so we've been meeting with them and look forward to continuing to work with them. So they had a couple of points of feedback, none of which are probably particularly surprising, cost implementation questions. And then we have a number of pieces of written public comment on the smoking ordinance. Almost all of these pieces of comment do revolve around the proposed prohibition of smoking outside at bars. So we have comments from on that particular topic from Bobby Allen, Craig Freeman, James Burrell, Jeffrey Rosenberg, Ken Abdisian, Chris Leet, Mark Hollingsworth, Matt McKenney, Russ Whitlock, Tim Rogers, and Tony Gangloff, and I apologize if I mispronounced anybody's name there. We also have a comment from Bob Heinbaugh and Paul Henriksen regarding a proposed vendor who was proposing to Village Fest to sell tobacco products. And so I wanted to make sure all of those comments that we've received are available to the commissioners. I'll just, because a lot of these comments kind of follow a similar template, I'll just pull up a couple for reference that we received over the past day or so. Most of them, I'll just kind of read this one verbatim, and then others are along similar tenor, so folks can take a look. So this one is from Bobby Allen, it's the first one we received yesterday. So this one states, dear members of the Sustainability Commission, I am writing to express my strong opposition to the inclusion of bars and their outdoor patios in the proposed expansion of the smoking ordinance. Including these establishments in the ordinance would have detrimental effects on our city's economy, tourism, and the LGBTQ+ community. Palm Springs is renowned for its vibrant LGBTQ+ nightlife, with bars serving as essential social hubs. Implementing a smoking ban in these establishments, including their outdoor patios, could lead to a decline in patronage, adversely affecting local businesses and the city's economy. Moreover, such a measure could be perceived as a direct attack on the LGBTQ+ community, raising concerns about inclusivity and respect for diversity. I urge the commission to remove the term drink, so excluding bars and their outdoor patios from the proposed smoking restrictions to prevent economic harm and negative perceptions. Engage with the community by involving LGBTQ+ community members and business owners in discussions to understand the cultural significance of these spaces and the potential impact of the proposed ordinance. Preserve outdoor patios, so ensure that the proposed regulations do not affect the outdoor patios of bars, allowing patrons to enjoy these spaces without additional restrictions. By taking these steps, the commission can ensure that any policy changes are inclusive, culturally sensitive, and supportive of the diverse communities that make Palm Springs unique. Thank you for considering my perspective on this critical issue. Sincerely, and I believe this is from Bobby Allen. And the rest of the comments are along similar lines, but would encourage the commissioners to read the particular shades of feedback in each of those.
Thank you. And moving on to the next item in the agenda, it's a presentation from the city staff, the year in review. If you miss it tonight, it'll be on television next week.
Yes. We could call our.
How will it be on television?
Oh, I feel like we're just gonna take the show on the road. We won't. But you never know. Could be on YouTube television as well. Okay, so. We wanted to take a few minutes, and I also want to acknowledge our brilliant graphic wizard, Juliet, for making a beautiful template for us. So thank you, Juliet. You know, no longer are subjected to my graphic design as my passion slides, so thank you. So I wanted to just briefly highlight some of the things that we've done as a group over the past year, some of the things that the department has been making progress on, just because I was kind of doing this look back exercise myself and was glad to have the opportunity to see the volume of work and topics that we've discussed this year. So we're gonna kind of pass this around. So here's a few, sorry, our little faces are in the way. Let me see if I can move these little guys. So a few key numerical pieces of information. So we had one new commissioner join us this year, Commissioner Boyd, thank you. 3 new ad hoc subcommittees this year. So we have our bird strike subcommittee, we have leaf blowers, and we have Measure J. Those are all new areas of work that the commission has. 1 new staff member, Anita Villa, and 1 returning civics fellow. So we were able to extend Juliet's term here with us for another year. Some other highlights, over $1 million in grant funding raised, primarily by this guy sitting to my right. 2 shredding events held, thanks to Ben, with over 6 tons of shredding generated. Over $500,000 in turf conversion rebates have been issued this year by Desert Water Agency. 30 public EV chargers pretty much working, over 90% functionality, that's my personal victory. And then, as of, earlier today, 9 dedicated Palm Springs post stories, and I do want to acknowledge that we have our beloved Kendall, local reporter who has returned his honors into me, so, well, I've been back now. Okay, so I wanted to pull up a couple of. I started on, a couple of highlights from the commission this year, just to kind of give you a sense of what progress and things that we've done this year. So in the first quarter, we had presentations from Desert Community Energy, CV Link, and on the topic of how GHG analysis is done. Staff provided updates on transportation and energy efficiency surveys, community garden, action planning, and our tree ordinance. And between all of our subcommittees and groups, we discussed doing community cleanups, talking about air quality risks, recycling signage, and waste at community events. And then funding was also allocated for bikes for the summer reading program in Q1. And that was Dawn's Star Turn as our first TikTok. Q2, so we also learned a lot in Q2. This is a shot from our induction stove event, which also happened, that you'll hear more about that later. So we got presentations on new state water regulations, the zoning code update process, IREN, Sunline, and the history of Sunrise Park, which was kind of fun. Staff provided updates on how Earth Day went this year, turf conversion and water use, energy efficiency work in city buildings, and our burgeoning social media presence. And we spent a lot of time as this group discussing and working on bird strikes and bird-friendly windows, leaf blowers, air quality communication, and access to the CD link. And then Q3 and Q4, you'll notice it's kind of a shorter looking list, but that's because we've been really going into the details on a couple of topics. So we've been talking to you all a lot about our heat and shade work and some of the turf conversion that's going to be happening here at City Hall. But we've really delved into the energy efficient single family homes reach code. And we have in these last couple of meetings been talking a lot about the smoking ordinance and expanding those smoking areas. And commissioners in our last meeting voted to recommend the reach code to the city council. So that's just a quick highlight of what this group has been up to in our 11 meetings that we had this year. So quite a packed series of meetings. And I'm going to turn it over to Juliet to talk a little bit about her work.
Yes. So the beginning of the year started with the energy efficiency survey, which thanks to Benita, we reached our goal of 100. So that was great. And the big outcome of the survey was that we got to learn that a lot of the residents were excited about energy efficiency upgrades like duct ceilings and solar panels, but have hesitation due to cost and local resources. Also worked on the energy audits with Erin, and we just received, we already went through a presentation from IREN, and now we're going to be analyzing the results from those, and hopefully we can implement some things for our fire stations. And also the main thing of my second term is the ordinance prep. I know you guys already approved the ordinance going through council. Now we're just working with a lot of stakeholders like the tribe, as well as the building department and the Desert Valley Building Association.
Okay, so we've been a one project at a time. So this year, even though it started in April, has been full of events and projects that we've either attended, collaborated with, or was just there to support. With Stroll Spin and Wind being our Earth Day event this year, Journey to Darkness, shredding e-waste and bulky item events. We had one in April, one in October. We also included pre-shredding this time, which ended up being a huge success, and people are asking for it once more. So we're going to continue doing that thanks to PSCS. We were at the farmers market, the Rite of Silence, resource fairs, induction demos. We did 2 at Mizell. We did have some commissioners there that attended. We also did the asphalt art project, summer readings, the Victoria Park ribbon cutting, Taste of Palm Springs, and tabling for surveys. So we made sure we were seeing whether we were collaborating or just being involved somehow. We were out and about the Palm Springs, letting them know sustainability is here.
Okay, so leading up the conversation. So we have the heat and shade plan, which we got money for through Caltrans for $400,000. We're also part of the comprehensive safety plan, so that's vehicles, pedestrian, and bicycles, updating it so that it meets the federal safe streets standards. We got $776,000 for that. We did the transportation surveys earlier this year, and then recently we did the greenhouse gas surveys with CVAC. And then the community garden, we're at capacity again, and we've installed some new landscaping, vines and whatnot around the perimeter. We were also part of the road reconfiguration, designs and outreach, so that's for South Palm Canyon Racket Club in Little Tuscany. And then we've been working on the tree ordinance. We've done the first draft of reviews, and now we're just re-editing and kind of doing some more other stuff like technical manuals and tree palettes.
Okay, and so what can you look forward to from our department next year, in addition to the fact that there will be one more of us sitting on this side of the table at some point? So 3 top goals that I wanted to highlight here, so delivering ordinances and programs to city council, so that's what we've been tracking for a lot, especially over this last quarter. Completing our process around, not only, the foodware ordinance, which we'll talk a little bit about that text update, energy efficient renovations, reach code, smoking ordinance and tree ordinance, so kind of taking those to their logical conclusion, and preparing those for city council, and then all of the assorted programs, so I know Christian mentioned things like technical manual, all the different pieces that will support those pieces of work when they go to the council. Next is kind of getting back into that next planning cycle, so in collaboration with CVAG, who's doing a greenhouse gas inventory for the whole valley, which is really, provides some really interesting insights. Once that's done, we're gonna be finalizing some greenhouse pathways to make sure we have a clear path from that inventory to our goals. Then also beginning the heat and shade and safe streets work. Juliet and I are gonna be diving in on commercial buildings, and we'll be completing our collaboration on the zoning code in addition to planning all of the public outreach and things that will support that. And then launching new programs, so continuing to provide outreach and support to Palm Springs residents, businesses, and visitors, really leaning in on those focus areas that we've been talking about, so heat and shade, buildings, safe transportation, and engaging people with waste. So those are kind of the top things you'll continue to hear from us with, greater detail as the months pass, but that is what you should expect to see from this side of the table. And that is our brief year-end review. So happy to take any questions that folks may have. Just wanted to thank also this incredible team who I would not be here without. So I appreciate it. Any questions?
Any questions?
A lot of great work. With those tree ordinance, will we get to see an update in the new year?
Yes.
What just done early or?
We'll be bringing back the draft probably first to the subcommittee and then to the commission. Probably February.
I may have already known that,
I don't know that you did. We've only recently ourselves known that, so.
but great.
Yeah.
So I just want to say good work, everybody, also to the commission. Like I said, I'm new, but you guys have done a lot of amazing stuff, so well done.
Thank you. And yes, the great work commissioners. We've really kind of focused in on a lot of things this year, so. Okay, any other questions?
Just want to thank you all for the excellent report, and I think I dated myself, it won't be on television, it'll be on YouTube.
Yeah. I was like, you might know more than I do, but we're gonna roll with it, that's all good. I will be here next week.
myself too. I'm like, oh, when's it gonna be on TV?
That's not television. YouTube app, put in.
That's true.
So.
Yeah, YouTube TV. Alright, excellent, okay, cool, then that completes our presentation.
Thank you again, and we'll move on to the next item in the agenda, which is chair's comments. And there are a few things that have been happening with the planning commission and the city council recently. I think they've been coming up quickly, but I think we've talked about some of these things in past meetings, but I'd like to give a summary of a few things that have gone on. The first is related to the warehouse and fulfillment center. I think in our last meeting, we were talking about the fact that the planning commission was going to have a discussion about that. It turned out that the discussion was on December 4th. There was a lot of public comment, a lot actually a lot in favor of the development, but many that were opposed to a large development like that. I made public comment on behalf of the commission, and I emphasized our GHG reduction goals and the need for planning and sustainability to work together in assessing impacts of such projects. It turns out that the project developer and the Sierra Club had previously signed an environmental agreement to include such things as utilizing solar power, solar panels, and a plan for charging electric trucks. Some of the things that, you know, came up as objections actually had been discussed and agreed to between the developer and the planning commission. So that was quite significant. And the planning commission did pass the proposal. I think it'll go on to the architectural review committee for more detailed analysis. The next item came up kind of quickly. It was the Chick-fil-A, which was proposed in the Springs Shopping Center. That's the shopping center where Home Depot is. And the Chick-fil-A proposal had 3 drive-through lanes. That kind of caught my attention because of the things that we've been talking about with regard to, you know, traffic and the impact on vehicle traffic. The planning commission had a discussion of that. Actually, it's a public hearing on December 11th. And at that meeting, Vice Chair Rotner made public comment, emphasizing greenhouse gas reduction goals that we have statewide, including the city, and the need for more rigorous assessment of vehicle emissions and traffic impacts. Turns out that this discussion will continue at the January 8th planning commission meeting. The developer has been asked to provide more detailed analysis of the traffic and vehicle impacts. I think we should evaluate the need for public comment from sustainability. Right now, we don't have a staff report, so we really don't know what's going to be said. But that's something that might be effective like it seemed to be before. And finally, at the December 12th city council members, the council meeting, the council members agreed to hold an emergency discussion about implementing a moratorium on new drive-throughs in the city. And this is planned for the January 9th city council meeting. And again, we don't have a staff report, but this is something that we probably should discuss, having public comment from sustainability. And there will be a meeting of the climate action subcommittee before that meeting. So that would be an opportunity to discuss what would go into public comment. So these are things that have been happening quickly, and more will be coming up very soon. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
I saw in the news also that the council was considering limiting drive-throughs. So that's encouraging to hear that.
Yeah,
And
they're
I'm
actually,
glad that we're part of it.
yeah, they're actually proposing a moratorium on new drive-throughs. It's a time where the zoning code is being developed, and I think it's thought that this should be considered in the zoning code, but to not move ahead with any new ones at this time.
Commissioner Boyd.
I have 2 comments about it, but I guess questions a little bit kind of comment. The one I was curious as to the transportation, the fulfillment center. The way I understood it, they basically waived all the environmental regulations.
So I'm not a planner, so I'm gonna
Okay.
do my best to
Okay.
summarize a little bit what happened. So CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Analysis Process, you know this better than I do, so but just for those who are listening who may not know, provides for a relatively prescribed type of environmental analysis that happens for all new projects. Planners and planning commissions are allowed to issue a statement of overriding objective. If there is a policy need or a desire from a municipality to have a certain type of project, even though it might go outside of a certain type, and they can't do it for every type of thing. So like, for example, I think if they were like discharging a lot of poison into the groundwater, I don't know if they're allowed to do like a statement of overriding objective. But they are able to do it, for example, in this case, I think they were looking at some of the traffic impacts and things. Because there had been city council direction that they wanted to explore this type of use. And that there had generally been, like, they're not prohibited under our zoning code, and the council has said that they want to look at these. So they issued that statement of overriding objective. I think The Sierra Club agreement was developed in parallel. That was, the city is not party to that agreement, so that exists between the developer and the Sierra Club. That includes some types of measures that wouldn't be able to be analyzed as part of CEQA because they aren't committed to as part of that land use process. So there are some mitigations that I think come into play a little bit when they're thinking about it. So they didn't completely waive like the environmental rules, but they said that basically the traffic numbers, and I wanna say probably the GHG numbers, were higher than we would normally see as part of an acceptable CEQA process, but they were within an acceptable limit that, from their perspective, aligned with a priority direction from the city council. I don't know if that helps out, that was a really government answer, I apologize.
No, that's helpful. So do we know the impact on GHG?
The environmental impact report does have a GHG impact analysis in it, that's available for the project. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but they did do a GHG analysis based on it. You said you had other questions?
If you have the,
No,
if you have the follow on.
I wanted to make sure I was following this right. Are we talking about the warehouse?
The warehouse, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
The center, yeah.
And I guess my other question is, I saw that they're having a planning commission about the project at the tramway, that area?
That
Is
just
that,
came out today, that was the
yeah,
specific use, is that what's called?
The specific plan? Oh, the specific plan for the
Specific
College
plan,
Park neighborhood,
yes.
yeah, that's a new, because that area was originally designated to be for College of the Desert. And it's a really long story that I don't know the details of, but if you're curious about it, I can send you some articles, but College of the Desert is now obviously being built over here. So the city is creating a new plan that would allow for specific types of uses in that way. But my understanding is that is intended to be for residential and other kind of like high density sort of walkable neighborhood kind of things.
And that's Tramway Road.
Correct, that's up north of Desert Highland neighborhood. And there are a few different community outreach sessions happening about that.
Actually, that's what I was gonna
Okay,
say,
go
I
for it.
attended one.
Oh, great, do you wanna give a summary?
Yeah, it was a little confusing because they wanted us to do input, but didn't tell us how much acreage we were
Oh.
dealing with. And it's not just that area where COD is going, there are lots on Indian Canyon and other lots. The city wants to, I guess, do development in the north end of the city. So I think the next one's coming in, I don't know, February, March, hopefully I'll get a notice on it. But I would encourage everybody to go, because it's very interesting, you get your input in, and we live right where it's
there,
gonna
yeah.
happen,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah, definitely, thank you.
is this something we'll keep an eye on, or?
I mean, I believe so, I mean, something that staff is keeping an eye on, we are really focused on providing feedback to the zoning code update process, because from our perspective, the better way to make sure we are turning the whole ship is to make sure the rules are updated to reflect sustainability goals. I think it can be challenging on a project by project basis, because like, it's hard to sometimes a lot of this analysis is like, it's a little iffy. We don't necessarily have a ton of data that allows us to do a project by project analysis without sort of a high level strategic vision of where we're trying to go. So we've been really focusing our staff time on things like master plans, or, like the specific plan project, I think is a good one that we've been trying to keep tabs on. I basically keep saying like, I want my community shared solar and dense all electric carbon free affordable housing. That's like, those are my dreams, but no, okay. So we'll see how it goes. But in terms of where we've been putting our effort on the planning side, also to provide clarity to applicants, to make sure that we're just kind of having a smoother process, we've been really focusing on that upstream component. And so, and as commissioners have ideas for the zoning code, please feel free to continue to share those to us. If you have like a favorite zoning code update, we are actively helping to channel those to the process as well. Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you. And then we will move on to subcommittee reports. And the first is the Standing Subcommittee on Waste Reduction. Mr. Roman.
Thank you. We had a very quick, efficient meeting, probably one of the quickest ones we've ever had, but we're all down for efficiency. Just a couple highlights. Staff reported on dates for the next shredding events and planning that with Convention Center, and also pre-shredding believe I noted these correctly, starting in January 6th through the 9th. To meet volunteers, I think, staff will probably let us know more about that, but if you can do it, it's pretty amazing how much paper people have. It's pretty amazing, and I'll plan to be, volunteering. Also, Coordinator Villa spoke about community outreach, which I think is really exciting. The first one is scheduled for January 25th. I think more information will come as we get closer to that. Liz Hernandez is back from her maternity leave. She looked great. She was remote, but exciting that she's back. And she kind of summarized the single family and multi-family and commercial work that's ongoing. It sounded like they're making progress on compliance again with single family and working with educating folks, and it sounded like mainly in the north end of town. So she's making a lot of progress there. Continued work with the commercial. There's been challenges with waste and on cross contamination, but they're still working on it. It sounds like they're slowly making progress. Let's see. Where I think they're going to talk about. I think that's kind of the general gist of it. You'll have the report. The only other kind of big thing is the next meeting was scheduled for January 2nd. I think we really want to do that, so we moved it to January 14th at 1 p.m. Questions?
Yes. Not one question is can the recycling paper be considered as procurement for SB 1383?
I think you flagged that for me before and I need to find out. So our Tower Cycle contact and I are going to be meeting with them in January. So I'm not sure. Hopefully that would be great.
That will be great.
Yeah.
And the second thing on the waste reduction is I found something called CET Charlie Echo Tom. It's a nonprofit based out of Massachusetts. Sorry if I'm butchering the name. So they are doing a program called Train the Trainer, where they are forming a cohort training how to conduct waste audits specifically for restaurants. I signed up for the program. It's no cost to the people. They received some grant funding. So they are looking for people from the community whom they can train and they can go and do these things in audits in the community. I think that will be a good opportunity for any one of us to jump in and get the training. I'm going to forward the details to Liz as well. I send the email to you. That's something I found this month because I skipped the meeting. So that's my contribution.
Perhaps we can add that to the agenda.
Any other comments or questions? Moving on to the Standing Subcommittee on Climate Action. I'll make that report. The report from the November meeting was distributed with the materials for this meeting. So if you haven't had a chance to read it, please do. And the December report is in progress. We just met last week. One thing we discussed at quite a bit of length is the presentation of the energy efficient upgrade ordinance to the City Council. We've been targeting that for January. Now it's looking unlikely that we'll be able to fit it into an already full agenda of the council in January. So it likely will be delayed to February. But more significantly, we thought that the first presentation to the council should be information only, not a first reading, because there's so much information in that ordinance and there's still work being done on it to clarify things. So we thought it would be best the first time to do information only, then have the first reading 1 or 2 months later when the council had space on the agenda. We had a request at the last commission meeting to discuss motor vehicle use at city events. We touched upon that briefly. And one thing that we discussed was vehicle idling. And that's something that's come up in the commission in the past. And in the January meeting, Specialist Wheeler will give a presentation on idling based upon some of his previous work. And we discussed Earth Month or Earth Semester, the months leading to Earth Month milestones and activities, things like the tree and energy ordinances, the annual report, greenhouse gas inventory. There'll be a media campaign and the shredding event. So lots going on with regard to Earth Semester. And I'd like to propose a change to the time of the January 8th meeting. The Planning Commission is meeting that evening at 5:30, and we'll be discussing the Chick-fil-A proposal again. So I'd like to propose that the January 8th Climate Action Subcommittee meeting be at 2:00 on that afternoon, the January 8th, like it was for the last meeting that we had. I hope that's acceptable to the members of the commission, the subcommittee. So,
Question?
Just thank you for taking up that question of idling vehicles at events. It's a lot of things, but it's a delicate issue.
it is, we realize it's politically sensitive, especially with all the parades
Right.
that we have.
Yeah, and we have this habit of wanting to show our 1950s cars that have exhaust.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Then we'll move on to the ad hoc subcommittee on bird strikes. Commissioner Frick.
Okay, now I keep pushing this down the road, but I did work on it this week. So we should have something to show you guys probably in February. Probably, so we still have to meet again. And we're working on still those 2 tracks. Possible building ordinance for buildings to incorporate bird-friendly glass, and then how to retrofit current windows to make them bird-friendly. So we're still working on those 2 tracks and just putting together a document for that.
Any comments or questions?
Just curious question. I know we talked about when the airport is getting upgraded, we are looking into like giving people like soundproof windows or something. Can those 2 can be combined at this point, or it's too?
That's a good question. I will look into it and I can bring an answer back to the group. I don't know enough about how the windows with the airport work.
I do know I had worked with a architectural firm. It's a big business that they go in and redesign the windows, and it's federally funded, I believe, so it may be a challenge. I mean, there may or may not be opportunities there, just based on the guidelines.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the ad hoc subcommittee on leaf blowers. I'll just give a brief summary and the subcommittee members can add to it. We had met prior to the last commission meeting. 2 of the things that we talked about were writing a letter or a special comment column for the Desert Sun, just talking about the ban and the importance of enforcing it. And we also talked about putting up yard signs in various neighborhoods to emphasize that the ban exists. And Commissioner Frick did a lot of work in the past couple of weeks on that, and did a draft of the letter or article from the Desert Sun, and also gave some more information about potential designs for signs. But I'll let him speak a little bit more about that if he'd like, but we'll probably meet sometime in January to move further on that. Anything to add?
That summarizes right there.
Okay. Anybody else comments? And then finally, we have an ad hoc subcommittee on Measure J projects. Chair Putner, do you have anything to add, or the other commission members?
I think we need to meet offline and figure out a date to meet. So maybe right after this. Or
Okay. Thank you. And then the next item on the agenda is Director's Report. Director McCloy.
Sure. Okay, so you got kind of a brief staff memo this time because we've kind of been focusing in on a smaller number of things than usual. So just wanted to give a couple of quick highlights and then wanted to turn over to some team members to give some additional things that we wanted to highlight. So one thing that you may have noticed in the staff report is I am not here for like a month after Thursday. So if you need me, no, you don't. So you can contact any one of these wonderful team members, who are dividing and conquering as necessary. But in terms of subcommittees and things, you're in great hands for next month, and then I'll be back the day of our next commission meeting, so look forward to greeting everyone bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at that point. So a couple of things. One, Chair Clark gave a good summary of where we're at with the energy efficient reach code ordinance. So basically, we have a number of different pieces that we're trying to manage timeline-wise. One is making sure we have concurrence from the tribe and the tribal council. So since this is something that deals with buildings, it is part of our agreement with the tribe that they do have, they have the right to approve or disapprove the ordinance. So we're working with them to get them additional information. We will also take the ordinance to the tribal council process when the time comes, once everybody's kind of up to speed on that. And then also working with stakeholders like from the building community, and then just really working out the details of internal implementation. So it's a complicated beast. I mean, you all read it. It's kind of thorny to understand. Just imagine being a building tech or a building permit tech trying to approve it. So we've been working on a number of different things related to that. Juliet's been doing great analysis. It's been really useful in answering some of the questions that we're getting, and doing some mock-ups of how people are going to be interacting with the ordinance, but more to come on that. You'll hear some more updates from us in January, but I did want to apologize that we will not be taking this for a council vote at the end of January. But we are still tracking for that information presentation for some time in February at this point. Kind of depends on some of the pieces with like tribe approval and just sort of all those, order of operations kind of stuff. So more to come on that. Happy to answer any questions that folks may have. But that's kind of the main thing that I heard Juliet and I've been focusing a lot on. But I know we wanted to talk maybe about shredding and community cleanup, and then also a little bit about the e-bike voucher program. So maybe I'll turn to Benita first. Talk about that.
Alright, so we do have our shredding event coming up January 11. That'll be at the convention center once more, so if any volunteers would like to help out, please email me so we can schedule that. We'll be doing tree shredding here at City Hall again, so that's gonna be fantastic. It usually helps the lines go by a little bit quicker. We also have our first community cleanup that's gonna be held at the James O. Jesse. Is that the neighborhood? The neighborhood at James O. Jesse, that'll be January 25th. Volunteers are more than welcome. We already have it online, we already have 6 people currently registered that I can see. So if anybody else wants to register, I can help you, or you can do it online. Let's see, we also have confirmed April 5th is for the shredding event as well, that is confirmed. So yeah, pretty set for that.
The California Air Resources Board is funding a e-bike incentive voucher program. They are releasing it tomorrow at 6 p.m. On their website. You can apply. It's based on income, and they give vouchers starting at $1,750 and up to $2,000. And you can buy e-bikes from approved retailers that have a map. People will just need to upload their ID and income verification. And they're only doing 1,500 vouchers for the month of December, so it might go quick. So if you know anyone who is interested, tell them to go on the application at 6 p.m. tomorrow.
And the income guidelines roughly align with the CARE program, which is the electricity discount for Edison. So if you or a neighbor or a family member receive CARE, you are likely to qualify for the e-bike discount. But if you think that you might be in that realm, you can go on the CARB website and you can go through their little table and see.
Yeah, they also take if you're enrolled in any public assistance program as well. It doesn't have to be just wages or anything.
So at 6.
Any questions or comments?
Just a brief one, I had mentioned to LP that would be nice to have an update on the EPPPPP, whatever it is, from long ago, whether or not it's working.
Yes, yeah, happy to do that.
Environmental
Environmental.
preferable purchasing policy, there we go.
Yeah, I would be happy to bring that back. I am going to say that it will probably be March when I bring that back. Which would be good because it's like this anniversary of the policy's implementation by the council as well.
Oh,
Because January, I think we'll be focusing on some of the ordinances in February as well, so.
yeah.
Happy to bring that up in March.
But along the lines of, we are a sustainable city, we want one way to know.
Yeah, want to evaluate how it's working it. Happy to bring that back.
We can add that to our future agenda items list that we discuss regularly.
Yes.
It's kind of going back to the bikes. I don't know when the 1PS, just distributing information of, I'm sure you might share that or an opportunity to share it at 1PS or I think it's a great opportunity for folks, or I just drew a blank on the website, but
Engage.
yes.
Yep, that's a good thing to put on Engage, we can do that. I know our team did mention that at 1PS last week, do you wanna,
Actually,
or you don't, okay.
no,
We may
I
not
recall.
know. Okay, good.
that may not have been mentioned.
It's kind of, sorry,
It
we're
wasn't
sharing my.
shredding.
Yeah, it's kind of like late breaking information that
Yeah,
we've
it was
gotten
too late.
rolled out.
Yeah, and just release the information, so they've
Yeah.
been
Yeah, we just.
talking, this program was supposed to have started in April. And then June, and then now, I think like a week or two ago, they said, we're doing it now, so.
Yeah, but we can definitely put it on Engage, to put it up for tomorrow.
Cause is it ongoing or is it just for
So-
December?
It would go.
Sorry.
In theory, right now, they're just doing 1,500 for December.
For the whole state, that's the total number of hours that they have,
Okay.
so we anticipate that they'll go in 15 minutes. Pretty much.
Or the
Yeah, or less, so we're, yeah, right? But, you know, it's also an interesting program, you know, if it goes well and people in the community are interested in it, because that's something that we look at, trying to offer something similar in the future. That's something that the commission could always think about if they decide they wanna do that. But yeah, so we're hoping to, you know, to get interested folks ready to hit the button right at 6.
The local bike shop has already sent out an email about
Good.
it. Okay.
Yes,
Great.
2 of our local bike shops are signed up, right?
Yes, I sent them the application to get approved, so they are approved retailers.
And what, can you remind the group which 2 those are?
Trek and Alcorn Adaptive, bike company.
Thank you for the director's report. Any more comments? See, we have an item on meeting minutes, because we don't have any tonight.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'll add that to the circulation version of the slides, number of minutes LP did not approve, that are waiting, that Ben has beautifully drafted, that I have not signed off on, I believe.
The chair may issue a pardon.
Or at minimum, some type of clemency.
Then we now move on to old business. The first item is the foodware ordinance for McCloy.
I keep clicking things and I'm done. Okay, so I know I promised everyone a really big presentation on this month. This is a really big presentation. So as you all may remember, we are going to expand the foodware ordinance to include a ban on the sale of polystyrene or unenclosed polystyrene coolers. So you all may know that polystyrene is a really effective insulator, and inside a lot of your reusable igloo coolers does exist a layer of polystyrene. This ordinance is not proposing to ban any product that has polystyrene inside of it. That would be an enforcement nightmare, and also not necessarily the point, because we're trying to move away from the single-use disposable polystyrene as opposed to those more durable products. The number of lines that will change in the ordinance is 5. So there's a 3-line definition that gets added, and a 2-line sentence that says, including polystyrene takeout or coolers and other disposable holding containers. The number of the month in which you will receive a formal approval request is 2, because you're gonna get in February. And that's when you're gonna sign off on recommending that to the city council, so that way we can have it as part of like an earth package sometime in the spring. This will probably be able to go as a consent item, because it's a relatively tactical change to the ordinance, and it's kind of just a clarification of the existing ordinance. One could theoretically interpret it to say that this might already not be allowed, but that would be a pretty generous interpretation, and it's not where we or our lawyers have come down on. So again, I wanted to thank Vice Chair Runner for helping to surface some example text that our lawyers were cool with. from a number of different cities. Different cities handle this in different ways, like some cities have a whole standalone ordinance that's just for polystyrene coolers. We're not planning to have a separate section of the code, we just wanna embed it in our existing ordinance, so you will see those beautiful 5 lines of text in February. Does anyone else have any questions? We are also planning at that time to bring an update to the city council as part of the staff report of how the food ordinance has been going. So just as a quick summary, Ben has made great progress. We have confirmed that we are pretty sure that China King is now phone free. So that's been one of our, China King is now phone free. That one has been a stalwart of the phone. But I think they finally used up their old stock and they've now transitioned. And so Ben's really been focused in on a number of those places. As we kind of move past our foam era, we will be refocusing in on reuse for dine-in, and distributing single-use plastic bags. Both of those things, reuse for dine-in is required and distributing single-use plastic bags is not allowed. Reuse for dine-in is really tricky with things like Subway and McDonald's, but we're getting there. So, we'll be focusing more on that later in the year.
Reuse of what?
Oh, reuse for on-site dining. So basically, if you're dining in, the ordinance requires that you be served on reusable, in reusable cups or plates or things like that. Which most places do, it's really just kind of fast food places that don't always do that. There's a number of different reasons why they say that they do that, but there are ways around it too. Any other questions? You look like you have a question, I can't tell, okay. Cool, so look forward to the final approval in February, but now you know what you're gonna see. Yes.
Are the new restaurants that going to start is gonna get that they are not allowed to use styrofoam anymore as part of their
Correct, it's part of the business license package, so it's not a condition of our building permits. Some cities actually have set that up as it's like a condition of the building permit. We don't have that here, but it is part of their business license process.
went to Josh Sushi.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
The phone?
Yes.
Oh, no,
But
okay.
they,
All right,
I
sounds
will
good.
formally write you an email about that.
We will add that to our list.
The place is nice, the food is good, and at the end I'm like,
Well, since they're new, they probably have not received our scholarship and our outreach yet, so we will be happy to visit. Thank you for letting us know. Any other styrofoam to report while we're here?
now they.
Oh, I love it.
Taco Asado.
Where's that?
It's on El Cielo and Ramon.
Oh, okay, yeah, down in that little strip.
Yeah, and also I mentioned in the well, I mentioned it already, so I won't. Just events.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah. So Village Fest, we've been making good progress, so we've had a few people reach out for the scholarship for Village Fest, which has been good. So that's been one targeted place we've been making good progress in Village Fest.
I'll go ahead and make my comment. One of the things I was happy to see was the conversion of the grocery stores into paper bags. Well, now they're back to plastic bags.
That's like a, sorry, that's a state level confusion, complication. So it appeared as though the state had closed the plastic bag loophole. And I believe maybe that, is it January 1st? So they may go back again away from the plastic. They might be getting rid of them while they still can, because the state has a plastic bag ban, but they allow bags of thicker than a certain millimeter thickness to be still used, and that's why you see those thicker plastic bags. But there was a law passed and signed by the governor last year that closes that loophole, so now those should not be allowed. They will have to be proper durable bags.
And I've been telling at the farmers market because some of the vendors use the plastic bags, and I told them, just don't invest anymore because starting January 1st, you are not allowed to use this, and city will come for checking on you.
State will come. We can enforce that one.
Okay.
It's a state law.
Okay.
But yes, we will encourage them to transition.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on foodware?
Sorry. So we are saying not to give styrofoam, but what about the farmers market when they are packing meat in styrofoam plate?
So anything that's like a packaged thing like meat or that's packaged off site is still allowed. So like if you think about the grocery store, they have the styrofoam trays under the meat and stuff, that's allowed. That's a health and safety code issue.
Okay.
And so that's not something that we're able to change. good question, that we wanna make sure we're being consistent.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to the smoking ordinance, Director McCloy.
Yes, okay, so, you all were provided a voluminous packet of letters, to read about smoking ordinance, so most of it was the same that you received in October, so, hopefully just kind of more of the same. I did also include, two things, one, sort of like the AI summary that Vice Chair Wagner generated, and then two, some comments and feedback on some things that we want to clean up from Chair Clark. So as you all saw in summary in the updated staff report, the ordinance attempts to do a couple of things. One is expanding no smoking prohibitions to certain areas of multifamily housing. Another is expanding areas in commercial businesses where it wouldn't be allowed, including outdoor areas of bars and restaurants. And those are kind of the main major changes. The one other thing that I noted in the staff report is the Blue Zones Initiative launch. So some of you may have been reading about that a little bit in the news. The city chose to join in with Blue Zones as part of a Riverside County health-led effort to look at the city and improving its improving the livelihoods of residents of Palm Springs and increasing longevity and health. And so one of the things that they talk about as part of Blue Zones is reducing smoking and exposure to secondhand smoke. So there is a focus as part of that study process, which just kicked off recently, on looking at things like alcohol and tobacco related policies. So there may be some synergy there. The public comments that we've received, I know you all have heard a lot of the public comment that's come in the past from Paul and from some of the other advocates during the community. And then all of the public comment that I summarized earlier, we got I think 10 written pieces of comment that are on the online portal. So wanted to start kind of going through this in brief pieces. So one is to turn to the text. So to see if there were any clarifying questions, any thoughts, any pieces of feedback on the text itself before we turn to the public feedback. But from the commissioner's perspective, were there any things that were unclear, things that you wanted to know more about, things that you liked, didn't like in the text? And maybe we'll go with the stickies approach as we manage the conversation, depending on how much feedback we get. Okay, so we'll start with Commissioner Alexander.
This is just picky, but on page 12, there are two sentences where words ran into each other.
Oops, okay. Sounds good.
And on the same page, there's a section, but it's blank as to what the section is.
Okay. Yeah, some of that might be some like little drafting artifacts.
Yeah, something,
So, yeah.
I could tell something happened.
Yeah, okay.
And the only other thing happened, this is just a question to educate me. Tot lots.
Oh, it's a way that certain types of playgrounds are defined.
Okay.
It's kind of it's a term that we don't use
I
that
never
often
heard-
anymore.
Yeah, I never heard.
But it does exist like in our existing code, and
Okay.
in some of the existing state codes, so it sometimes appears. We don't often use that terminology these days, but
Well, I learned.
I also didn't know what that was either, so I had to go. It's like a playground area.
All right, thank you.
Yes, true.
Just like to clarify the comments that I made. In the case of this ordinance, what we have is the proposed ordinance came from on a clean sheet of paper. It wasn't a revision of the ordinance that it already exists, like when there was a minor revision made to the smoking ordinance related to the airport, and that was just a change in a particular paragraph. But this was a brand new ordinance. And so when I went through the old one and the new one again, I saw that there was a lot of differences in terminology. And since we're not making any more significant changes other than the two that we've been talking about, we want to make it clear to the council and anybody else who reviews it that nothing else has changed, everything else is the same. So I think it needs some wordsmithing to fix that. That was the major reason for making those comments. And I think we've talked in the past about perhaps having a subcommittee to work on it. That might be a thing for 2 or 3 people to work on to do the rewording.
Roy addressed some of my concerns, actually. I was not understanding quite the relationship between this. It's written in ordinance language versus what was the original
Versus what's in
proposal.
the code, yeah.
And there's some things that have disappeared. Some of which seem to be changes somewhere they were decided to be made. But for example, the one that's written in ordinance language doesn't mention housing. It mentions elevators and things like that, but it mentions housing in the definition, but then it doesn't mention housing in terms of the where smoking is prohibited.
I'll have to double check on that. I think it should be in there. That's what I remember being. And you're, okay, yeah.
I'm looking at
Yeah.
that.
Oh, that's the existing state code. That's
So
not,
what-
that's not the draft ordinance, that's the existing code.
That's the existing code.
Oh, existing code.
The,
Okay.
the
Oh, so
ordinance is
somehow I
the,
don't have, okay,
yeah, it's the one that came first in the packet.
okay.
Cause I was just like, I'm pretty sure I read it in there, but I forgot.
Well,
Yeah.
there was 2 emails and
Right. Okay, yeah, we can make sure to clarify which one is which in those packets, yeah. So
okay.
the one that's kind of like longer, bigger letters is the excerpt from the existing code.
Okay, okay. And I don't have the latest version then of what is that. So most of my questions are irrelevant then, okay?
I mean, we can go through some of them if you'd like, but I think maybe if you'd like, I'd be happy to hop on. The
Well, it did seem that since the public comments were about bars, and it seems that bars are not mentioned in that.
Yeah,
And-
that's,
and
that's,
it's like-
it is in the,
Did we
Yes, it
change how
is.
we're handling
It
bars?
is. Well, I think the terminology could be changed, but bars are there.
yeah, so I think
It's in
it was
And
just.
it's in there.
Okay, so I'm missing something.
Okay,
Never
well,
mind.
I think that just falls under the umbrella. We probably need to tighten up some of the terminology just to make it clear what's new and what's not.
Okay, because that's not clear from this part, or from what I mean, I downloaded both, I tried to look at both. The email that came from Benito and then the email that came from LP. And somehow I missed that. One thing that is very minor, but is we discussed California Housing Code in various spots. We never mentioned that HUD has code on housing on public housing that's supported by HUD. That is anti-smoking.
Yeah.
And
I'll
that
make sure
should probably be mentioned in there.
Okay, good call, thanks. Okay. What else in terms of clarification questions on the text? Okay, should we then move to discussing some of the public feedback that we've received to date on the ordinance?
I just had a question about whether or not we should have a the city attorney review based on the comments that were received about LGBT equity issues, and just making sure that we address it since it's been brought up on multiple levels.
I'd be happy to flag that for them.
Yeah, just because it was brought up.
Mhm.
I would also, what I added to my list is, I know that based on what Paul has said, City of West Hollywood has a smoking ban.
Mhm.
As to how they might have treated it if we looked at those when it was being written, but just because they had so many letters, anyway, that's all I
Yeah,
have.
totally, no, that's a great point. Yep, we can flag that for the city attorney to take a look at from that perspective. I agree that it's be good for us to keep on it. Okay, sorry, I was writing down.
That's
and I
okay.
didn't look that direction. Apologize.
So it seems like we didn't hear from places like Lulu or some of that have outside patios.
That's true, I don't think we did, no.
So I guess my concern is responding to a section like that for others, and maybe they haven't seen it, but haven't responded, because I would like to hear from everyone.
Sure, and I think
Yeah,
that raises
right.
it raises a good point of a need probably, especially given that we've gotten, on this ordinance, we get a lot of really specific feedback from small groups of people. And so I think figuring out the best way to broaden that outreach, like to more restaurants that have patios, do they have an opinion? To staff members, to broadening it to hopefully a broader section of maybe our renter community who might be in multifamily housing. I think those are gonna be some things that would behoove us to do. If we wanna really have a well-rounded picture of how people feel about this.
Because there are a lot of restaurants with patios.
Yeah.
And
But
we're not
no,
hearing from them.
there's no smoking. I don't think there's smoking allowed if there's food. I can't verify that, but
Mhm.
I mean, I would not dine at a restaurant that had smoking, and I've eaten at a lot of restaurants that have outdoor dining and no one smokes.
Yeah.
And they don't have smoking sections. So I'm not sure if it's allowed.
That's again,
It
my.
might not be, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a
reasoning
good.
is that We're not
Sorry
hearing
to interrupt.
from them at all.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And it's like, were there business impacts to them when they phased it out or when that was
And
implemented
the
or
Thompson
something?
Hotel has an outside patio.
Yeah.
So
Sure. Yeah, and that also, I apologize, I'm not an expert on this issue. I'm trying to catch up. So it's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. So there's certain things like, you know, if food is allowed, I feel like I should know that answer and I don't. But hoping to continue to
It's
catch up on some of that.
something to add.
Yeah, so it's something we can do some more outreach to some of those communities. Yes, Commissioner Khan.
So I guess the basic question is, if it's already not allowed.
For just food establishments, there's, it is, we know it is
This
allowed
bars
for
alone.
bars that don't serve food.
Okay. Got it.
We know that for sure, and that I think is where the majority of the feedback came in today, was people
Right.
saying, please don't.
I'm just thinking about getting feedback from the community and, certainly if we were to take this tomorrow and go to the city council, there would probably be a lot of comments there. If people knew that it was coming, but, would it make sense to have a special sustainability only hearing, public hearing on that subject? We did that when the council requested the leaf blower ban. We had a special hearing that was run by the commission just to get public comments there. Although in this case, I think we know what kind of comments that we would get. We'd probably get more of the same that we received tonight.
Yeah, I think, that's definitely something we could do. We could do kind of like a special meeting where we invite the community to kind of give feedback. I think, especially given who could be impacted by this kind of ordinance, it would behoove us to think creatively about how we make sure all those voices get heard. So for example, like, if you're a tenant who has limited mobility, are you gonna be able to come to, you know, this type of special hearing? I'm not sure. You know, maybe some business owners are well organized and are familiar with what's going on in the city, but others may not be. Maybe some people may feel more comfortable speaking publicly about it versus not. You know, I think that could be a really good piece of an outreach strategy, and it could be a good opportunity to really encourage people to come and directly share their feedback to the commission. And then we can think as a group about some other ways to kind of make sure we're getting the message out so people know that this is a good session.
And there were two things that came out of the comments. One, Vice Chair Rotner already brought up, that's the equity issue, but also the impact on businesses. And that's something that's particularly sensitive to our city leaders right now, so that perhaps needs to be aired.
But again, it's all all bars, because that specifically talked about gay bar.
Well,
But they're regular, let's say heterosexual bars. I want to hear from them if they feel like they're being not discriminated against, but it's going to impact their business.
well, I think the issue is any bar, whoever they serve, if they allow smoking in their patio, that would affect their
That's
business.
But I want to hear them,
Well,
yeah.
Sure, make sure we have a good sampling from many different parts of our commercial community, yeah. And yeah, and I think looking at the West Hollywood example will also be constructive to see sort of did they do an economic impact analysis on it? Is it something that sort of made a change for them one way or the other?
Do we even know how many bars would be
It's
in
possible,
this group?
good question, it's possible for us to know how many bars there are. It is maybe possible for us to know, I don't know that they have to register whether they allow smoking or not, so we can definitely figure out who all the bars are. And they could be called or visited to ask or find out.
Bars only.
Yeah, bars,
Yeah.
only, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because you have to register separately if you want to serve food, it's like extra license. Any other thoughts on the public comments? Okay. So then maybe we'll move to our third little line here, is next steps. So, intended to kind of have this year as a placeholder to talk about the blue zones possibility. That is also another group of people who are able to do additional outreach and some additional research. And they may be also a good source of data on what the impacts have been in other cities that have implemented something like this. So that's a group that we can tap into a little bit for some of this. It also kind of positions, if the commission decides to move forward with something like this, it does position it as part of a broader effort. I mean, I think right now, one of the challenges, at least for me on this ordinance, is that it kind of sits outside, I mean, kind of to the point I was saying earlier, I don't really know that much about this, because this is really outside of my wheelhouse. It's a little bit outside of the kind of the work that we do, and it's leaning on different relationships that we don't necessarily have. And it's hard for us to present this within context, because this is one of a very small number of public health related things that we would do. And so I think, sort of making sure that it is logically connected to that broader framing, should the commission and the council want to move forward, would strengthen the kind of the overall packaging and the messaging. And we could potentially lean on those resources to help us do a little bit more research, or at least comparison with other cities. But wanted to hear, I know I've heard a little bit that outreach is wanted to be done. I think there's a little bit of discussion we can do on who does that and when, and do any commissioners want to help? That would be great. But so kind of thinking about how we do some more of that commercial outreach. I know we can definitely make people aware of it, provide them opportunities to give us feedback. I don't know if we want to do a webinar or like you said, a special meeting where folks can call in and give us feedback. We will also continue to collect written comment. Right now, our public comments are filed by date. I will just go ahead and add all of the comments on this issue to the same folder. So I can remind people every couple of weeks, like, check the folder if we get a bunch more stuff. But that way you can just click the same link and see what else we're doing. What other thoughts do folks have on next steps for this?
I know I have a lot of subcommittees, but it feels like.
Yeah, it does feel subcommittee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels like a subcommittee.
Yeah.
Because
And I also
think there's a lot of pieces that we need to probably deep dive into.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, that's one suggestion on subcommittee.
I don't know if this is something that's ever done, but do we ever talk to council members on how what the pulse is there prior to moving forward? Or I just what the protocol might be in terms of what everyone's thinking or
Sure.
feeling.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll also defer to Chair Clark a little bit on this. From a staff perspective, we go through the city manager for things like that. So when we're ready to kind of bring something to them, or if we get a request to do so, we would go through the city manager and they have regular briefings. But commissioners, I know, do regularly reach out to council members. I think it generally behooves commissions to all be on the same page about the manner of the outreach and what the suggestion is going to be. But that's something that I know commissioners, especially chairs and folks, do often reach out to council members just to kind of take the temperature on it, which I think wouldn't be a bad idea at some point to do. Especially if there were to be any, and often, especially if we do like an informational presentation back to the council, because it's been a while since they've heard about this. We would usually present some sort of series of options that they could do. So we wouldn't necessarily come in there and say like, this is what you gotta do, it's this or nothing. We might say like, here's the full package. You could also take this out. You could also add this, like, we would probably come to them with that based on what we might understand their position to be. Yes.
I was gonna say along those same lines, it might be worth adding I know they named the head, whoever it is, of the Blue Skies.
Oh, the Blue Skies, yeah. The chair, president, what is this title?
Executive director.
Executive director, thank you.
Mhm.
So it might be worth it,
Yeah, and so as part of the Blue Zones kind of staff kickoff, Chair Clark and Vice Chair Rotner were able to give a brief summary of the smoking ordinance to the Blue Zones executive director and staff, but we also talked about like 80 million other things at that time. So they're at least aware that it's in process. They had a couple questions for us about sort of like who are the community members who are reaching out, and the feedback they gave us, like, we do tend to get a small number of people who reach out a lot, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but we have a group of committed advocates on this issue. On a couple of different aspects of the issue. But yes, looping in with them, I think it's gonna be a good way to do it. I think I saw a hand here first, but I know you have a follow-up. Do you have a new comment or a follow-up?
Follow up, I think.
Okay,
And
and then turn it over.
it's actually sort of combined with Roy. It seemed to me that when we first were bringing this up quite some time back, that we did have some comments from council members. So we did.
And that's what I wanted to elaborate on. At that time, I think it was 2021, 2022, there was one council member who was an advocate. And, but he felt in that year, fiscal year, whatever, that there weren't enough council members that would be in favor of it. So that was a reason that we didn't move forward with it during that period. And so now we have a much different council and we'd have to start over again with that. But that's, I think with something like this, this is gonna require a lot of work and we have a lot of other things going on. I think we really need to have some degree of certainty that it's going to be listened to by the council and acted upon, and then have a plan to present it to them.
And that fits with my memory that there was not widespread support. And at that time. For the specific issues that have come up about bars.
Right. Any other comments or thoughts?
Just one thing I would recommend, and I think it should be done anyway, is perhaps to go through the proposed version and make sure the terminology agrees with what's currently existing in the code. Maybe one or two people, I'd be willing to spend some time on it, not next week or the week after, but the next few months working on that. Perhaps somebody else would like to do that too.
My assessment is this is a major task. And it's questionable on acceptance. And there'll be a lot of flack. Not flack, but
It does seem to me that there might be some, before we spend too much effort in terms of, I think it's worth cleaning up the language. I think it's probably worth doing a little bit of community outreach, just,
Take the temperature.
take the temperature as well, just, maybe we'll hear from other bars that are like, no, I'm fine, or we'll hear from restaurants that went through the smoking ban that said, actually, it increased business because there were a lot of people that didn't come, so it would be, might behoove us just to take a little bit, because if there's sort of, if we get all the outdoor restaurants or that they have, they're saying, no, it dramatically increased business, then we probably.
Okay, yep.
I should note that when I say there'll be flack, it's not just about bars. There
Right.
were concerns about multifamily housing.
Yeah.
And restricting smoking in multifamily housing.
Yeah, we've gotten comments on that in the past. We didn't get them for this particular round. Yeah, it's a tricky one, because, yeah, I mean, it really impacts a small number of people, and it's like if you are in proximity to it, you probably really hate it, and if you smoke, you probably really feel strongly about your ability to continue to do so. So it's a bit challenging. I think we were preparing yourself.
Yeah, I'll retract.
So I'll just quickly summarize a couple of the suggestions that have been made. So we have some text-based suggestions to kind of go through to clean up the language. Kurt both suggested that commissioners could help with that, but also maybe that's something that staff should take on. We have a request to check in with our legal team about some of the public comment issues raised. We have sort of a general consensus, I think, of wanting to do at least a pulse taking of additional outreach to get some broader perspectives on the issue. And then we also have had a suggestion for a subcommittee and some pulse taking from the council members. It's a number of different suggestions. Do people want to rank them? Like,
Can I do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Same.
Sure.
I guess I would, as the person that suggested the subcommittee, I would say it might be worth cleaning the language and checking pulse before we.
Before we do that,
That's just my comment, but that's the person who made that comment.
You can you're
I would suggest we deprioritize it like that.
So checking the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Checking the pulse, you mean doing an outreach to, yeah.
Like a
'Cause I
limited
think-
outreach, not
yeah,
like
I-
a huge thing. but
Yeah, I think
part of
that's
it.
really important,
Okay.
to really understand how the entire city feels.
Sure, yeah, okay. It would be helpful to us to understand or to get some suggestions on who might be good representative groups or people to check in with on that side. And, you know, everybody here has a different perspective on Palm Springs. And so if there are particular places, like I know you mentioned Lulu's would be a good example because they have an outdoor patio and restaurant, and I know they're really involved with city stuff. They'd be easy for us to contact. You know, but if there are different groups or individual people that anybody might want to make an introduction to, or you go to a place a lot and you feel comfortable, you know, just pinging them next time you're there or something, that would be helpful. Otherwise, we can do our best to kind of come up with a list.
I have a contact with Willie's.
Okay.
Cause he has Gastropub
Mhm.
and he
Okay.
has 849, yeah.
Okay. Cool, thank you. Was there, I thought I saw maybe another name. No.
I have some contacts, I won't announce them publicly.
Yes.
There's that downtown association
Right, the Main Street.
and the
business.
hotels association.
Oh, good point, yeah.
And so those would be organized places that
Mhm.
would probably be able to help you. Ascertain who would be willing to confess to their point of view.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, good point. And maybe our economic development department can help us with that too, because they might get a more unfiltered feedback than we would get. Because they already have some of those relationships with businesses that we just don't have.
Yeah.
Doing nothing, they're just getting direct.
So get the numbers from them.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so it sounds like kind of over the next, and you know, as I've mentioned, we do have a number of different things that we're chugging along on as a team right now, particularly around our different ordinances, but over the next like 6 weeks or so, we'll work on seeing where folks are at on this type of issue, getting a slightly more representative piece of feedback, and then hopefully the next time we have this on an agenda, we'll have a more representative set of comments just to see if we're seeing trends beyond our group that we've seen to date. We had currently, I think, put that we wanted to bring this back in January. I think that's fine to bring back in January, but we can also wait. I'll defer to the commission when you want to see this again.
We'll be having our planning meeting on the January meeting on Thursday, but it seems to me that that's too soon to bring it up.
It's not gonna give us a lot of time to do that outreach, so hopefully maybe a little bit later.
January of 2026.
Noted. Okay, so we'll wait, then you and I can put our heads together and we'll come back with a proposal on when we think that makes sense.
Perfect. Thank you all. We have no new business on the agenda. And the final item is the commissioner comments and January agenda items. So we'll go around the table as usual. And if anybody has any additional comments or suggestions for agenda items, please bring them up. Commissioner Frick.
Nothing for me.
Nothing for me.
Nothing.
Commissioner Walker.
I was just wondering, like, I think we talked about this, like the emergency preparedness certification. I think it's offered by the county and it's a 3-day training. I'm wondering, once a year, how can we get that program out here and get our community trained and have as many as people trained on that emergency preparedness?
Yes, so I know our emergency management department has in past years offered 3 trainings a year for CERT. But I haven't heard Danny mention any trainings this year, so I can check in with him to see when the next ones are scheduled. Normally they start happening like in January or so,
I think you said something at 1 p.m.
Okay, gotcha, that was very last week. So I can check in and I can share that information with you.
And the second one is, I stumbled upon City of Long Beach's sustainability website for some reason. I think they have really good programs in place which we can take a look and see what we can take from them. I think they already invented a wheel for us in many of those places. Like they applied for one of the grant so that they can hire youth ambassadors, so the youth can go door to door and educate the community on sustainability. And they have a program on urban agriculture incentive zoning, where they ask the vacant landlords in the city saying, hey, we will incentivize if you guys will let the vacant lots to be farmed. We will have local farmer come and grow food for the community, but we will incentivize you for letting us use that empty lot. So they have some really unique programs that we can look into. That's another one.
Thank you. We will do. Nope, nothing from me.
One thing I mentioned to you a while back is, there are various sustainability officers for corporations around town. I know two of them, and it might help if we had some of them once in a while come and talk about what they do and think about.
Totally. Yeah, I think we have we've worked through a lot of our kind of calendar of targeted guest presentations. I think that could be a good one to get some of those folks to come in, maybe to give some presentations.
Well, one of them is actually a woman who's very popular in the LGBT community, so maybe it'd be fitting with where we are right now.
Sure, yeah. And I think you maybe mentioned her.
Yeah.
Happy to.
It would be helpful if we knew who those were, so we could discuss that in our planning meeting.
I'll give you one of them.
Okay.
I don't know the other's name. I'm sorry, related to that, maybe we should do something about talking like with the food bank about, because we have a lot that I've volunteered at the food bank, the LGBT food bank. We have a lot of stuff we throw away.
Shouldn't be.
And shouldn't be.
We
Or need to be composted or
We
something.
did work on getting them more compost containers.
So what?
There are more compost bins there now.
Okay.
And they were, the management staff were trained on composting by the SDS recently, but we can do a follow up.
The problem is volunteers is when the cars are outside, we're moving late.
Yeah, fair. Might be worth us shadowing their operation.
That could be a good scholar discussion.
Yeah.
Add it to the list.
Anything for me, question?
No, the only question I had related to corporations is how it ties into our community or maybe the sustainability, and this may be a planning thing, is what are they doing that's helping our sustainability plan and our roadmap?
Yeah.
I think we need to keep looking back at that.
We could always ask
I
them,
think this is mostly waste reduction.
but we could always ask them to come in and tell us what they're doing that's aligned with the roadmap.
Yeah. Just so
Yeah.
it's kind of focused.
Okay. Sure, Clark, anything for you?
The only thing is to confirm with you and staff members and Vice Chair Rodner that we'll be meeting at 10 on Thursday to discuss the January meeting. Will you be available?
Fine for us if it works for the two of you, but
10 on Thursday.
was 10 the time that didn't work for you or 11?
I will be late. I have a meeting that ends at
Right.
10, so yeah, so.
10:05.
10:05. 10:15. It'll take me 15 minutes. I'll be on my bike.
So does that work for you?
So anytime at 10 or later, so she'll always just say 10:30.
That would be great.
Okay.
On my e-bike.
You can advertise for the voucher, we'll give you a little
Yes,
loudspeaker,
yeah.
you just run around. E-bike bikes are good.
I love it. I wish I had more bikes because it's amazing. That's a great thing.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping that they will see how successful this is and want to do more. Okay,
Okay, the next item is adjournment. I would like to wish everybody happy holidays, safe travels, whatever you're planning to do. And get a motion to adjourn the meeting to January 21st, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. So motion.
I motion to adjourn.
Second,
A second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.